Well, here we are back up at the cabin. I brought with me my magic backpack full of all sorts of goodies. It made for a savage uphill hike that took a few hours. And after eating my lunch and taking a rest, I realized the real work had just begun. Here you can see the one side of the cabin is completely shot, with big gaps in between all the logs. Instead of trying poorly to jam the gaps full of wood and whatever chinking I could stuff in, I've decided to stabilize the wall and then cover at least this one side entirely with cedar shingles, which will work perfectly at sealing the gaps and help protect these already compromised logs. Now I am measuring the cabin's height to decide what length of shake to use. It came out to be 65 inches tall, so I'm going to use 22-inch long shakes, and we'll just trim the excess off the bottom once I'm finished. I found this chainsaw in the garbage bin a few years ago and completely tore it apart and rebuilt the engine and fixed and replaced other broken parts on it. I also used a welder for the first time when I made the big dogs for it too. It hasn't run in at least 2 years and sat in the shed with half a tank of fuel in it. I topped it up and here you go. And as you'll see, I was quite happy with its performance. Now with my precise 22-inch measuring stick, I'm bucking up an old blown down cedar, which is the ideal candidate for making shakes. It's already been dead and drying out for a long time, making it easier for splitting. But as you'll see later on, I ran into one major problem with a few of these rounds. Next on the to-do list is carving a mallet out of a small hemlock sapling I bucked out of my way in the last part of the video. I'm making this mallet because in order to use a froe, the tool that you'll see me using later on, you need to hit it with something soft, otherwise using a hammer or the backside of an axe, you'll just wreck the tool in no time. Traditionally, you'd want to use a piece of hardwood or a big tree limb with a nice and hard, tough knot. But out here, I just used what I had and it worked just fine. Here's a lesson for all you prospective shake blockers out there. If you have to kill yourself trying to pop a block of cedar apart for 5 minutes, don't even bother with it, because if you can't pop it with an axe and a nice clean few hits, you're never going to be able to pop it apart using a froe and a mallet. Almost every tool I brought out here for this job is special to me in one way or another. This axe I brought with me sat rusting away at an abandoned mining camp for probably 80 years before I found it, cleaned it up, and rehandled it. It is by far the best cutting and sharpest axe I have. It's nice to put new life into quality old forgotten tools. This is my first time using a froe. Now you can see clearly why you have to use a wooden mallet to smash it into the wood. The first few shakes were a struggle to get the technique down, and I learned to pop the shake loose, you have to push the handle away. Pulling the handle towards you gets nothing done. After the shake is popped out of the cedar bolt, which is the technical term for the firewood-sized piece of cedar that the shingles are made from, I touch up any imperfections with my razor-sharp hatchet and trim off the sapwood, which is prone to rot in quick time. The thin white strip on the right side of the cedar shake is the sapwood. What I didn't waste my time filming was me fighting with the shake bolt to the lower left of the frame. Those pieces came from the rounds I was fighting earlier with the axe. The ugly knot in the end of the bolt was near impossible to pop a shake out given the time and effort it took. I could just cut the bolt a bit shorter to avoid it, but there's enough wood around I'll pick and choose from what clean, knot-free bolts I have, and then cut a few more rounds the correct length from the base of the tree, where there are little to no knots. Bottom line is, if you can't crack it loose in more than a minute, time to find a new piece of wood. I didn't do a great job of showing it here, but each time I take a shake off, I'm turning the block upside down. This makes the shake tapered, and you can get more out of a bolt than if you just knocked off square shakes. At the end of the day, I hadn't let the world on fire, but in about an hour I had produced 16 shakes that were good enough for this old cabin. The most special tool I have and use here is my great-grandfather's hewing hatchet. This hatchet belongs in a museum, it's so old. Looking closely, you can see the blacksmith forged horseshoe nails jammed into the top of the handle to act as wedges. He may have died decades before I was ever even born, but it's a heartfelt feeling that's hard to describe, using the same tool he made his living with every single day all those years ago.